First of all, thank you, everybody. Many of you were delegates to the World Zionist Congress that happened in October in Israel. And we had varying experiences there based on our previous experiences before and who we are. And as we have said, this delegation is a very strong and large delegation to the Congress. And so it has always been my contention that we need to work together as a delegation to make progress within the World Zionist Organization. The purpose of this panel is to take a look at our experience at the Congress. Thank you, Rabbi Jason, for joining us. Welcome. And we will be speaking with a couple of representatives from new slates and a couple of I'm going to say experienced Congress goers and will reflect a little bit on our experience at the Congress and what we are going to be doing going forward. So on the panel, we have Shoshana Dweck to my left, who serves as the co-chair of Artseinu Alami, the Worldwide Reform Movement Zionist body, and sits on the board of ARTSA. She has many leadership positions in Reform Judaism, but I want to say most importantly, she's our incoming chair of the board of AZM. So that's the most important thing. Never mind your other stuff that you do, Shoshana. Rob Kurtz, sitting next to Shoshana, heads the Am Yisrael Chai slate, which is a new slate in the recent election. Professionally, he's a businessman and a media producer. I'm going to say this because it just makes it just impressive to me. He's written and produced many primetime television shows, including Boy Meets World, Grace Under Fire, and Everyone's a Hero. So that's very impressive, Rob. Thank you for joining us here. And we have next to Rob is Bat-El Blaish Sultanic. Did I say it correctly, Bat-El? Okay, fantastic. Who's the executive director of the Aid Coalition, also a new slate. And she is one of the first female cadets from the Israeli Naval Academy. Big yasher koach for that. She was the deputy commander of an IDF missile vessel, and then the first female airborne naval officer. Listen, I mean, none of us can really hold a candle to that. And a major in the reserves. And she also has a legal background. So listen, we're all failing against that. Unbelievable. Thank you for being with us, Bat-El. Rabbi Jason Herman coordinates the Dorshei Torah of Etzion slate, which was previously a new slate in 2020, so a while back. And he is the spiritual leader of the Hudson Yards Synagogue, also known as Congregation Beth Israel West Side Jewish Center, very long name, in New York City. He is also the executive director of the International Rabbinic Fellowship and serves as a vice president of the New York Board of Rabbis. Okay, so let's get started so we can get to the meat of what we are going to speak about. I'm going to start with our new slates here. Rob, I'm going to start with you. As the leader of a new slate that actually saw a lot of success in our elections, you have quite a few mandates now to the Congress. Tell us a little bit about your constituency, what you hope to achieve by running a slate, and what your impressions were of your first Congress experience.
Okay, it's a lot. Thank you. First of all, thank you. And it's great to be here. Our slate is, hopefully our slate will serve as a bridge to all the good things we were hearing during the course of this discussion, which is the fact that while I myself am a Shabbos observant and Torah observant Jew, I represent thousands and thousands of people who are very different than me. I represent thousands of college kids who are struggling on today's campuses and came out in unbelievable force with an opportunity to try to be heard, not from a religious point of view, not from right, not from left, because I can't take a position right or left, right? I have college kids who are very much to the right, college kids to the left. I don't really care. I just care that they love Israel and that they feel secure in their Judaism on campus. And really the most important part of our mission is to get these kids to Israel, where they see it for themselves, they touch it for themselves, and then they fall in love with it for themselves. And whether they fall in love on the right or the left is not very material to me. We have students in the various groups that we've gone who've joined the IDF. We've had lone soldiers. We have lone soldiers who we lost in the Gaza war. And we have students who've gone to yeshiva and to seminary. And we have the overwhelming majority of our students who just come home and now love Israel and want to be a part of it and feel connected. So that's our slate in a nutshell. And so what I hope to accomplish is the opportunity to get more Kobe Pollocks, and Kobe, wherever you are, I took pictures. I'm going to send them to your mom and dad. They're going to be very proud of you. To get more Kobe Pollocks in this room next time, to get more young people, because it is their future. We all know how we feel about it. None of us are going to change each other's opinions. None of us. We can fight from today to tomorrow. I don't think there's a single person in here on the left who said, you know, I heard that guy, now maybe I'm more on the right. And I don't think there's anybody on the right who's going to say, you know, I just heard that guy speak. You know, I think I'm going to agree with the left. But the one thing I do know is that most of the people in this room are either parents or grandparents. And our kids are struggling. I'm on campus every day. And they don't need this fight. So to answer your question about the Congress, the first day was exciting. They engaged. The second day and that night was painful. Unbelievable painful to watch my young people sit there with their mouths open going, what's going on? And some of them are here today. They're texting me, what does this mean? Why is he saying this? Why are they doing that? They don't want to be part of this fight. They don't have this fight. Some of them are Reformed, some are conservative, some are Orthodox. They are truly, we're hearing about it, we're reading about it, we're getting upset about it. They're living it on a campus. And I'm telling you, for no other reason than just for our kids. We have to pull back on the fight, and we have to come together as Zionists. If we can all think about it, talk about it, have our feelings, they are literally living on a front line of real enemies, real attacks. I was at a Shabbos table 2 weeks ago where Columbia told me he had a guy in the cafeteria come up to him, put his hand on his back and call him a Zionist pig, right? Nobody defended him, right? They're really living that. So what can we do in this room? We can say we put all that aside and we will build a home for them. We'll build a home for them that allows them to come in from the left, from the right, from the center, but we will build a home and they will see that we were able to come together. And if we accomplish anything like that, then this was a great, great opportunity to be a part of your slate.
Thank you. Thank you. But El, I'm going to turn to you because you are representing another slate, a smaller slate, one that has quite a different constituency. So basically, what was your experience and at the Congress? Did it meet with your expectations, contrast with your expectations, and what do you hope to accomplish?
So first and foremost, thank you, Debbie. Thank you, everyone, for welcoming us to the Zionist family. It's our honor. And I'd like to divide my answer into two parts. One, I'd like to talk about a challenge, and afterward, an opportunity. So what struck me the most about being a newcomer to the World Congress is that the mission of the WZO, of the institutions, is greater and most important than it has ever been. Yet, the structure that supports it remains outdated. We have the resources, we have the beliefs, we have the community that is ready to engage. But the system and the processes are outdated. Now, in a very practical way, where do I see it? First of all, we saw it in the elections process. Do we have clear KPIs for departments? How do we measure success in the Congress or in the world, the Zionist institutions? Is there a protocol to enhance organizational goals that encourage cross-department collaboration, OKRs? I'm not sure. I think those need to be brought in. So, and why is this important? It's important because it can simply save money. So I think if we want to stay relevant, we have to modernize, we have to promote transparency, and we need to strengthen civic participation. The way forward is simple. We need to open the doors wider to women, to young Jewish adults, and to the Israeli community that I represent, which is very dynamic, has a little chutzpah, more than usual, and is really looking to connect with the Zionist story. It is growing very fast in the last couple of years. So my bottom line about the challenge, the structural challenge, is this: ערב חג החנוכה, אנחנו לא צריכים ניסים, אנחנו פשוט צריכים לדעת לעבוד נכון. We don't need miracles. We need to know how to work right. So that's the first point. The second point is the opportunity. So looking around you right now, what is missing? I encourage you to do so. We must bring the young generation in, and you said it. It must be brought in. No left, no right. Everyone that's contributing from their small Zionist plot of land, כל אחד שתורם בחלקת האלוהים הקטנה שלו, needs to do what they got to do. Our mutual goal, and that's my KPI, should be no less than 1 million votes in the next elections. Civic participation is our KPI, key performance indicator, for relevancy. If we can't do that, we are not relevant. Sorry, being blunt. So I think that our leaders should be sitting here. They should be mentored. They should be hooked. They should be shaping the policy. And our role, all of us, is to simply enable that. Simply enable that. If we strengthen the Jewish and democratic, yes, democratic foundations of Israel, and make our institutions modern, accessible, not distant, and inspiring, the next generation will not only want to join, but they will want to lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Bat El. So I'm going to say, following on that, those experiences and that hope and that desire for some change, which I think is shared not just by newcomers to the Congress, but also by those of us who've been involved for a while. I'm going to turn to Shoshana, who has had a lot of experience with the WZO and with the Jewish Agency, and has been working on a number of those areas for a while, including, as you mentioned, women. So I'm going to turn it over to Shoshana. I don't have to give you more of a lead than that, Shoshana.
Debbie, thank you. And first, I have to say, we at AZM and ArtsUS are so excited to be in partnership with AID, and you've just seen a little bit of why.
Same.
So there's been a lot of conversation over these past couple of days about what's the value of resolutions, what's the value of working within the system, where are the women in the system? And there's also conversation about young adults and new delegates and new alternates who show up at the Congress and don't know what's going on and don't have a way to process, because while the Zionist work, the unity work of the first day is an incredibly important part of what we do at the Congress, so is the work of the Congress. So is the work of expressing our voice. So is the work of hearing each other, being in the spaces together where we can talk about issues and making the voice of the diaspora Jewish community heard within the Israeli political society and within Israeli public society, and then to bring what we learn back. That is the work of the second day under the design of the Congress this year. And that work, the work before that, though, that's the responsibility of our parties and of the AZM, and the opportunity for us to provide that training, to provide that context, to provide the relational work in advance so that people understand, so that like many of our young leaders from the World Union for Progressive Judaism and from the Reform Movement, they went back inspired as leaders to work with people within our coalition and across the aisle to bring these values forward and the opportunities forward within their communities around the world. So that what you're describing is a challenge to us, not just we shouldn't be doing that work, but no, there's actually more work for us to do. I want to give two examples of where we have started doing the work. I think it's been pretty clear that we've acknowledged that there is systemic change needed with regard to the presence of women in leadership positions and diversity within leadership positions across the WZO and across the federations, frankly. AZM is uniquely balanced and includes voices of men and women, and it's something that you should applaud, because Because the reality is that you will find women leadership in Latin American federations, you will find interim women leadership in England, and one other in Europe. That's it. That's the list. And so we have change that needs to be made at the federations, within our parties, and also at the WZO. And that's why in February of 24, we passed a resolution. We spoke at Avada Poal, and we expressed our need both for a study of the equities within the WZO. Also, we wanted to get ahead. We were already seeing the inequities on women and employment situations happening because of the war. And we wanted the WZO to get ahead of it, to be aware of the issues that were developing on everything from overtime pay was only available for certain positions if they worked in the office. Right? So if not somebody on Miluim, but somebody who was at home supporting a family because their partner was on Miluim, right, was feeling a pay impact, a career path impact that will be felt for decades. And so we called for that study be done, and we called for a women's dialogue. And we have spent 2 years trying to get that dialogue started, and I am so grateful for the partnership, Michal Kababia and Debbie, and also from Hadassah, Carol Ann Schwartz, that we came together across the aisles, right, and across our movements, and across the pond, to be able to work together. And of course, Gusti Yoshua Braverman was a huge supporter of getting this launched, so that we were able to launch the Women's Caucus at the Congress. And you have the page in front of you to be able to join. And we want men to be involved in the dialogue as well. But there was also conversation about women in the leadership positions. One of those positions that is designated in the coalition agreement coming out of the Congress is the deputy chair of the Jewish Agency. And once again, that position has been allocated to Artzenu. We're very proud to be holding that position again. With the Jewish Agency, you actually have to go through an additional nominations process, a leadership nominations committee that involves the representation of the different members of the board of the Jewish Agency, the different constituents. So there is still process to go. But we're very pleased to be able to share with you that this week, no, actually, it's a new week already. It would have been last week. We shared with the leadership of the Jewish Agency, with Jaron Amog and with Josh Schwartz, that we will be putting forward the name of Ambassador Anna Azaria, most recently. She was most recently Israel's ambassador to the Czech Republic, and we are very excited to support her through the nominations process and God willing, to see her elected at the March Bog.
Thank you, Shoshana. It's great that people say resolutions don't have any teeth. They only have teeth if we make them have teeth, and this is one that has been pursued. So, again, these are things that have to be pursued, otherwise they sit in a drawer. And we thank Shoshana for her leadership on pursuing this. I'm going to turn now to Rabbi Jason. You had sort of almost the fortuitous opportunity to serve as the only diaspora representative on the committee that planned the 39th Congress. There were supposed to be no diaspora representatives on that committee, but your faction chose to appoint you, and we thank them for that. So this led to a resurgence of many conversations that been had over the years about procedures and leadership and structures of the WZO and the national institutions. Now that we're after the Congress, and what do you see are the realistic steps that can be taken to implement some of these changes, move the agendas, and the context of the leadership and the structures that we were talking about?
Thank you, and thanks for the invitation to be on the panel. So I think it actually came up yesterday first in the leadership seminar, as well as in Rav Doron's speech, that the notion of a shared vision, that Herzl said we had unity through shared vision, and that originally we had the goal of establishing a state. The state's been established. What are we going to do now? And I think the first thing before we start speaking about structures is we need to set a mission and a goal of what we want from the Zionist movement and we want from the national institutions. So I wrote a piece in didn't publish it, but I circulated it among the numbers of what the reform of these national institutions could look like. But I started with 3 missions, one for each of the 3 major national institutions. One is that we have a message to the world. And that message to the world as Zionists is that the Jewish people constitute a people and that we have a place among the family of nations. And that is a belief that is being challenged all across the world and in many different places. And saw that as that would be the role of the WZO to really put that view out there and defend that place, that we are a people with a place among the family of nations. The second mission is that we want to connect the Jews to our homeland and to the national rebirth that has happened in Israel. And that should become the mission of the Jewish Agency. In many ways it is. And the third is to settle and build the land of Israel, which should be the mission of Kakal. And then I started writing about moving departments around, that if the department isn't focused on one of those things for each of those organizations, such as the WZO doesn't perhaps need a settlement department, that should be in Kakal. Or a department that's about connecting Jews to Israel should be in the Jewish Agency, so that everything is mission focused and mission specific. So again, it's our message to the world, our message to the Jewish people, and the settlement of the land.
So thank you for that. And what I'm hearing is that, as I think we've talked about here in this forum a little bit last night, a little bit yesterday, that there is definitely, we need to start thinking differently about our national institutions, which is the WZO, Kakal, and the Jewish Agency, in terms of what is needed for the next 75 years of the state, and what is that role of the national institutions in the next 75 years of the state, given the fact that we've achieved the survival to this point, and now we need a mature country in which we're investing in different ways, and we look at it in a much more mature way. And so that may, as I'm hearing from all of you, necessitate some differences, some changes in structure, some changes in how we view it. And I'm gonna reiterate that I think the input of those of us from the diaspora, whether it be from here in the United States or from around the world, can be very valuable in those conversations, and we should make sure that those conversations are happening. So I'm going to just, does anybody want to follow up on this before we open? Any of you in the panel want to follow up on anything that was said before we open up to questions from the audience on this?
I think it's important to remember that in this room, we represent a significant part of the diaspora voice. And this question is not about us just talking to each other, but it's about working with Yair Lutstein. It's about working with Rav Doron Peretz. It's about raising our voice together. These are all, you know, we look at the Women's Caucus. You look at the resolution that we also passed right at this Congress that calls for transparency through reporting. Just calls for reporting on impact on the streams and the federations and on women, and right, are things balanced in what's happening, right? We need to get more windows into what is happening, but we also have an impact on our parties. So we can't disconnect ourselves from what's happening in the WZO, in Kakal, in the Jewish Agency by just saying it's what they are doing over there. We are represented by parties, not just at the moment of the election, but throughout the 5 years, and we need to raise our voice.
Before you answer, I'm just going to add one more thing to what Shoshana said, is that a number of people came up to me after the Congress and said, well, you know, I couldn't impact this, I couldn't impact that, or they didn't call me about X, Y, or Z. So I just want to follow up with something that Shoshana just said, and that is, it's up to us to actually put ourselves in there. Nobody's going to come to you and say, do you want to make a change? Do you want to come and do you have an opinion on this? You have to put yourself in there, and that's somewhat cultural to Israel, but also, you know, cultural to the national institutions. But you can have a voice if you make your voice heard. No one's going to come and ask you for it. You have to put it out there.
Debbie, if I could just add that transparency resolution that passed at the Congress It was written by our international youth movements led by the World Union for Progressive Judaism in our partnership with them. Our youth asserted themselves and brought an incredibly creative approach to the transparency question because they started working on it 18 months earlier, because they engaged with the issues, not just the overall vision of Zionism, but the specifics of how this work gets done. They studied, they learned, they drafted, they persuaded, and they were successful.
Sorry, Rob, I cut you off. But go ahead.
Not at all. I won't comment on structure. It'd be a little bit chutzpahdik as a brand new person into the whole setting of all the great work that's come before.
It's okay, I also did it.
Of all the great work that's come before me. So I'm not in a position to comment on structure, but I can comment on something I do understand. Before you get there, I only wish that it wasn't just one group that worked on it together. I didn't know about it, but 18 months earlier, working together. We have to find that commonality. And I will give you, since you gave examples, I'll give you a specific example. And it has happened in this room, and it can happen today. I met with Yaakov Hagoel yesterday, just briefly. We're a new slate. He wanted to say hello, great meet, talk. And he said to me, you know what you're doing on campus, I'd like you to meet Yair Lookstein, because he's involved with Israelis and the diaspora on campus and things like that. And I said, sure. He said, when you get there, see if you can find him and talk. The two of you can do a lot of good together. And I don't mean to embarrass you, Yair. So I went over to Yair, I found him, and I introduced myself, and I said, you know, I think we can work together. I'm involved on campus. I'm on campus all the time. And he said, great. And we talked about what we're doing. And then he said to me something very telling. He said, I almost don't want to say this, but do you think we can work together? I'm the head of reform. And I looked at him and I said, you know, don't you have a military background? Because that's what Yaakov had told me. He said, yes, a colonel, lieutenant colonel, major colonel, of course. In my mind, a general. I would have made you a general. And he said, yes. And I looked at him and I said, you know, Yair, it's amazing. You consider me that I may not want to work with you. I said, I am a guy who keeps Shabbos and Torah, mitzvahs and all. And yeah, that's who I am. You're a guy who gave your life, or were ready to at any minute, to defend our people, defend our land, and by doing so, defending our Torah. And you want to know if I would work with you? I said, I stand in awe of you. And I'm just telling you, that's the only way we will move forward as an organization. I promise you. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I walked over yesterday to Josh Weinberg and I said, Josh, let's do good things together, right? Yes, we don't always agree on religion. Okay, great. Hashem would like his family to get along. I don't know a parent who the most important thing is that their children get along. I do not expect my children to all agree with each other. They don't. But boy, it makes me happy when we're all together at the table and we get along. So I'm just saying, at this meeting today, if we start, not reform on one side and Eretz HaKodesh on the other, and Merkaz is over here and this over here, we agree on enough. We do. And if you want to build a future for these organizations, I only hope that the next time we get together, and I'm very excited that you and I will be on a panel together, that the next time we get together, a lot of different kids from a lot of different groups came together and wrote resolutions, because then I would be excited about those resolutions if they came from the young people. They found a way for all voices to be heard. We're not going to agree on anything. We're Jews. We come from 12 tribes. We have 12 tribes means we have at least 36 opinions. But we're still a family.
Thank you. Yes, but El, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to also share with you that the gap is not that big. I shop at Monsi. Bingo, that's my favorite place. That's my go-to. Hello. Ask everyone, yeah. So, I completely second what Shoshana said, what you said. I wish there was more youth sitting here in the crowd, because I think they each need to be sitting here and be mentored by the current leadership, and that's a big thing we need to take care of. And I wanted also to emphasize on what Shoshana says about the next 5 years. And on a personal note, and by the way, I'm going to be working with Yair, so we're going to be working together too. So, yeah. On a personal note, after serving 20 years in the military, in the Navy,
When did you start? At 5?
No, actually, I graduated the Naval Academy in 2002. I served as a deputy commander of a missile vessel during the Second Lebanon War. I was the first female airborne officer, commander of UAV squadrons. No, it's not just me. This is the DNA of my family.
Also, probably the fountain of youth, it looks like.
No, but no, I'm telling you, it's the DNA of my family. You know what? Let's get personal. Let's make it fun.
Well, you know, I by the way, I did almost 3 of the 4 things my wife asked me to do today. Saying I also accomplished a lot.
That's amazing. No, but I'm saying, people say usually what happens in the Congress stays in the Congress. So some of you might recognize the last name Sultanic. I met my husband Jesse at the 2010 World Zionist Congress, and 15 years later we have 4 children. So what started in the Congress, I have it's behind the walls of the Congress. Yeah. So that's not actually what I wanted to say, but I wanted to say that, like, on a personal note, in the Navy they say that the most dangerous part is not when the waves are high, but it's actually when you see the shore, when you see like the horizon and the shore. And that's where most of the sailors, they appear to be more calm, relaxed. But that's the most dangerous part. And I want to make an analogy to the next 5 years. I think that now that the ink is drying on the agreements and most of the positions have been set, I think this is a time not to take a step back and to come and be relaxed, but I think it's a time to accelerate. I think it's a time to work together. We must work together. We must define organizational goals, cross-department mechanisms that make us work together, because otherwise we will not be able to stand confident and proud in giving the results of the next elections. And again, I think our main goal should be to increase civic participation. That's how we know we're relevant. Thank you.
Rabbi, did you want to add in something?
Nope. We'll wait for the other question.
Okay. All right. So I see there's already a hand up over there. Go ahead. Is somebody giving out microphones? It's a little hard to get through, but we'll get there. And by the way, just while the microphone is moving over, I'm just going to say that the purpose of the AZM is to encourage and to facilitate these kinds of cross-pollination, that people are going to work together from different movements, and that's really the point. And we're going to make sure that happens even more than it has in the past. And Yair, we're happy that you're going to work with us on that as well. With inside. You're leaving the room. Yair, I want to make a point that Yair is the only WZO person who stayed in the room for this. And I want to commend you on that, Yair, because everybody else left and didn't hear what we had to say. But so you'll recount it to the rest of the leadership. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I'm Susan Miller with Not My USA. And this might not be the right place to talk about this, but I'm going to plow ahead because, women are supposed to speak up. With the technology that I know Israel has, it was very disappointing as the first-time delegate on a telephone call for voting 2 weeks ago. The translation was terrible. It took an hour to get everything to work. It seemed very disorganized. Is there anything that the AZM can do to help improve the process?
By the way, I completely agree with you. That was probably one of the absolute worst meetings, and a lot of them have been bad. And that was, I can't even express how bad that was. And no, we don't have that much influence. But again, Yair is in the room. Yair is going to be taking lots of notes. It's not that we don't express that, but we've expressed that many, many times, that there's a big lack of, it shows a lack of respect to not have prepared the meeting appropriately. I want to get to some other. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there's a quality difference in the meetings that are held comparably by, say, the Jewish Agency versus at the WCO. Part of it is the political reality and the kind of debates that happen. And part of it is that respect element in the quality of the translation, And it's also that we're talking over each other. So I know that there is focus on that going forward. That may have been the low point of those kinds of meetings that is now leading to, again, as we said, systemic change has to happen. Our voice at the AZM is probably the most important part to raise that, but also to our parties. You have to tell your representatives in the WZO, Yair, this is from me, that this matters to you. This matters to us.
I will say
He
that
already
this
knows
was
that because we've already told him.
Yeah, but this was also the first time. I will just also mention that the new incoming chair, who's from Emuna, of the Vada Poel, she, for the first time I've ever seen, she sent out actually an apology for that. So I'm going to commend her on having done that. And she, I think, now realizes she may need to get involved a little bit earlier in the process. But I'm going to say that was, I'm going to call out that as a positive. So I think Yair knew about that too.
So I can say that I know that Elisheva, who is a friend from Emunah, we served on the board of Kakal together for the last several years, and she's taken on this very important position. She was embarrassed by what happened on that meeting. I know that she spoke to the powers that be to make sure that that doesn't happen again, and I know that there's already action being taken to ensure that that kind of thing doesn't happen on any Zoom vote in the future. So I hope that we see a positive result of that. But I can't promise, but I can promise that we will try to make a difference.
Okay, thank you. So something's been heard. David Dormont, I see, has his hand up over here on the right, on the right of the room. My right.
David Dormont, I'm with Partners for Progressive Israel. I was on the Hatikva slate. I was wondering what your delegates thought of spending a long time going to Israel for what wound up being a 2-day set of meetings that only happens every 5 years, when we were limited to what we could discuss by the people in Israel, to 1 or 2 resolutions per group when there were many more to discuss, and then we didn't get to vote on leadership because backroom deals were being cut and took a month, and made it feel like the people in America, the people in the world didn't matter. All that mattered was the backroom deals in Israel.
So I'm going to say something about some of this, maybe not address all of it, but some of you might have been at the Jewish Agency meetings afterwards where I expressed that one of the things that I personally think, I'm going to speak for myself only at the moment, needs to happen is that we need to take the politics out of the whole structure of the WZO. And what I mean is not the politics of those of us representing our positions here, but that I personally believe that the Israeli representatives to the WZO should be elected the way we are elected to our positions, based on what they do for the Zionist movement, and not based on what political party they may have campaigned for in the last Israeli election, because their interests are about that last election or the coming election and not about what's happening within the national institutions. And I think that one thing, and it will be very, very, very difficult to change that, but it's the kind of thing that will take the 30% that is represented by the United States, plus the 30% that's represented by the rest of the diaspora, and maybe even some of the percentage that's represented, the 40% that's represented in Israel, to agree to do that. This is a huge, huge, huge change. But that would make a massive difference in how everything is run, because if the focus of how we choose leadership, how we run a Congress, what we discuss at a Congress, what the experience at the Congress is, and how we operate in between Congresses is about what needs to be accomplished by the national institutions in terms of investing in the future of the Jewish people, investing in making, Israel the place that we all need it to be as our homeland. If that is going to be the focus, then it can't be, the way we choose leadership can't be about what the Israeli elections are. There is a Knesset. It has a role, and we're not taking the Knesset's role. We want to do our job, and the Knesset needs to do its job, but let's separate them from each other. That's my suggestion. Rabbi.
So now I will jump in. So actually, having been on the planning committee for the Congress, I can tell you there was great amount of disappointment. And we raised the fact that actually, if you go back decades and decades ago, the Congress used to be 10 days. And then it actually shrunk down to a week, and then down to 3 days, and now this was even like less than 48 hours. And it's almost like they want less and less time. What? With trips, which the trips ended up getting canceled because of a protest, although some of them still happened. And, you know, it's like if you're doing this only once every 5 years, you know, do you want to really invest the time? And I will tell you, when I raised the issues on the planning committee, it was dismissed as, oh, that's just the Americans. You know, no one else seems to care. And I don't think that's true, but I think certainly, you know, we need our voices from the rest of the world. I want to add also one other thing in terms of selection of positions and things like this. I mentioned this to Shoshana last night. I did a little thought experiment with ChatGPT. You know, people have described Kakal as the sovereign wealth fund of the Jewish people. So I typed a prompt into ChatGPT, and I said, who in the Jewish community has sovereign wealth experience? By the way, I did not mention gender. I just said, who in the Jewish community has sovereign wealth experience? The first name that came up was actually a name of a woman. Her name is Lena Krupilnik. Anyone hear of her? Okay, what? I heard one yes? There's one yes. Out of this whole room. Lena Krupilnik, I then looked at who she is. What, two? Your daughter. Okay, Lena Krupilnik has been tasked with managing the revenues from the natural gas outputs off the Mediterranean coast of Israel in order to make sure that it delivers benefits to all of Israeli citizens. She works for the Bank of Israel and has tremendous experience. So I said, her name, most never heard of it. Why is she not perhaps mentioned as somebody who could lead Kakal, which is, you know, managing many, many more assets for the Jewish community? Because we're only looking within our own factions and within our own people, just the people we know. And if it's a political process, it's done, as Debbie said, for one of three reasons. Either you want to reward someone for something they did, you want to get something from somebody that they're going to give you in the future, or someone that you can put in who can control a process for you. But if we were to actually look out and who are the talented individuals out there, by the way, I think the women's issue would even solve itself, because just statistically, if it's 50% of the population, you're really looking for the best type of the people, you're going to find 50% of them are going to be women. And I think we need to cast a wider net. Okay. Yeah. Mm. I accept. I certainly accept that, but as I said, just from a little thought experiment from ChatGPT, right away, the first person we had was a very extremely qualified woman.
So, just a question: how do we bring it to a practical level? Do we establish a committee right now? Do we put like a I don't know, an operating plan? These are great points. What do we do? Is there a KPI? Is there a plan? Is there people that are going to be running this to finalization? How do we take it forward?
So I think there's a couple of questions, right, inside of Batel's question and even inside of that thought experience, because that is why we are taking the approach of systemic change with the Women's Caucus. It is to talk about, just on that particular issue, to actually bring us together. It's something that clearly unifies us across party lines, right, and enables us to exercise that muscle of working together to make change. Simply having someone who is a woman at the head of Kakal does not lead to systemic change. Look at what happened. We had a woman at the head of Kakal for the last term, and now we have what growth, right? So just putting a woman in place is not the same thing as making systemic change and understanding where the barriers are. So let's do this. Let's come together and let's do the work together. There is also the work that AZM can do in bringing our voices together. We've started seeing the energy that can happen when AZM brings its voice together. We're going to bring our voice together early. We're going to work with Yair, and we're going to provide new pathways. And also, we're going to raise our voice in new ways, building on what has come before, right? You guys blew the door open for us so that these questions can be heard when we raise them. And it is with deep gratitude that we take on the mantle of leadership following in your footsteps. So now we have to do something with the gift that we've been given of the light that has been shown on the issue by the AZM in the past term, in particular around this Congress. But there is a third thing, and we really cannot abdicate our own responsibilities within our parties. I will tell you that Artsenu holds a full nominations process in order to choose our elected officials, our appointed officials. We bring in our voices from around the world, and we do a thorough application and appointment process every time. From our Kakal board members on up, bring that to your parties. We have that responsibility within our parties.
So I'm going to get to a couple more questions from the floor, but just to follow up on one small thing about Dale's question is that there's going to need to be committees that are going to work on all of this, and we're going to invite all of you to tell us if you're interested in being involved. But beyond that, as Shoshana was saying, your influence within your own groups is extremely important. If you don't speak up to get your groups interested and also wanting to make these changes, it won't happen. It has to happen. Right now, the communications are only through factions. The decision-making is only through factions. We can make some changes, but it has to be that you have to speak within your group to make those changes as well. So I want to say that. Yes. We've got a few questions here. I'm going to go over here, and then there. All right, start. We got a mic over there.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Sherman, and I'm the Mazkira for Habonim Jor North America. We're a progressive labor Zionist youth movement. This is my first AZM biennial, so first of all, I want to say thank you so much for having me. And I also attended the World Zionist Congress for the first time in October with the Hatikva slate. And I want to just note that I'm disappointed and confused that there's no one from the progressive left on this panel. No one from my slate is here to represent me and my voice and my perspective. And I don't feel that as like a young person, when everyone is talking a lot about wanting to prioritize the voice of the youth, that my voice is being reflected and that priority is being reflected. I'm particularly also concerned with the educational programming that's happening for the AZYC youth cohort. And I'm worried that our progressive Zionist youth are not getting an educational approach that reflects an across-the-aisle strategy, which is something you guys are talking a lot about here. And I really am concerned about where our progressive youth are at. They're being asked to leave the Zionist movement, and when they don't feel supported in this space, I'm worried about what's going to happen for them. And I don't want them to feel alienated. I want them to feel embodied. So I'm here to represent the progressive youth, and I'm curious, how are you guys going to fix that? How are you going to reflect our voice and help our progressive youth feel inspired to be here?
Well, thank you for that. And of course, we have 54 member organizations, and we had 22 slates in the election. And so we did try to have something of a cross-section, but we didn't get everyone. And I apologize if you feel that you weren't represented in this particular slate or in specifically other ones. But of course, you have representatives within our leadership, and we continue to encourage you to join us at all gatherings and to speak up. We love to hear from you, and we always want to hear your perspective. So thank you for being here.
I want to emphasize something that you said. When you said about being pushed out of Zionist spaces, you mean that you're getting pressure from other activism that you're engaged with and in other arenas to step away from Zionism, and by being here, you're asserting that this is an important value, or no? Okay, so please, can you help clarify that point?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure right now from young people to leave any affiliation with Zionist movements, but then when they are strong enough to fight that pressure and come here and then they don't see that their voice is represented, there's less of a reason for them to show up in this space. So we need to ensure that we're fighting that pressure from the outside by giving them inspirational leaders who can show them that they belong here and we want their voice, even if it's different from everybody else. And I want to see that leadership reflected.
Well, we're going to call on you.
Hineni.
All right. Okay. Do you have a microphone over here?
Hi, my name
Yes.
is Dana Sinai. First of all, on October 8th, my daughter, who was then on 5th grade, went to her school, October 8th, 2023, and one of her best friends came to her and said, I'm gonna bring Hitler back to life. And she said, good, so we can do to him what we did with Eichmann. So what I want to say, actually, and I will have a question mark at the end, maybe, that I'm from the Israeli community. I got here 11 years ago, and I always felt like the Israeli community and the Jewish American community are like water and oil. That all changed on October 8th, because if we didn't have our Jewish American community and our friends from Tzufim, the Israeli Scouts, and all of you guys here, thank you. Round of applause for everyone here. I don't know if we could have survived this horrible thing here, where our loved ones are in Israel. So thank you all. I think what I want to say is that if in the previous Congress we had only one representative, Israeli representative, now we have so many more that can also speak our voice, because it's a little bit different. We experience it different, not more difficult or whatever, but difficult. So thank you for all of the other slates and Aid Coalition. I'm proud to know you, Batel and Jonathan, because it gives us also hope that things are going to be different. And I embrace your hug. I don't feel alone anymore. So thank you for that as well.
So, first of all, I just want to say very briefly that we are really, really happy that we have representation from the Israeli community in the United States now within the AZM. We've been looking to have that for a long time, and it's come to fruition now. We have the IAC, we have the AID coalition, so two different slates that were representing the Israeli community here, and I think it's a huge thing. We really welcome it, and we're happy to have that voice here, and we'll see what comes of it, but I'm sure it'll be great. We have one last question, and then we're going to move on.
Debbie?
Rifki Feiner.
If I
Oh,
might
I'm
just
sorry.
relate to Dana.
Oh, yes, go ahead. Sorry,
So-
and then we'll get to you, Rifki.
So Dana, I think we had a much of a turning moment the day after October 7th, and the experience that you've detailed about your daughter is probably something that we've all experienced in one way or another. I think that I'm thankful being here, married to an American, for the unwavering support of the United States of America. I think it's a two-way street, and I thank you all for that. And I think we all need to be proud of who we are. We need to be proud, and our children need to be proud of being Jewish.
Thank you. Rifki.
So to Batel's point, I'm hoping that we shouldn't need another committee. And what do I mean by that when you said, what should we do? I would love it that everyone leaves this room saying, not just saying we're going to work together. I don't know, not a resolution. I don't know what we could do as a document that all would be comfortable signing on. You know, I feel like you said, not to get complacent at this point, but we feel excited, you know, the things that we're talking about working together. I love all the stories and the different ideas. If people are comfortable signing on to something, that we can get as many people, that our goal is to move forward. And certainly in leadership positions, from the slates, from the parties, and other leadership organizations, anyone in the room, and to the youth. I love the idea what Debbie said about, I didn't get the young girl's name, I'm sorry, but definitely trying to include and going forward, and maybe some sort of survey after that we could see that, if someone feels that way, how do we include them going forward? Just a couple of suggestions, because I love the momentum, but like you say, what do we do going forward that it doesn't leave the minute we walk out the door? Thank you.
So, first of all, I want to say thank you to all of you for being here, for being part of this conversation. It's just the beginning of the conversation. All of you are valuable and can be part of this change and can be part of what the AZM does both here in the United States and within our institutions in Israel. And I want to say thank you to our members of the panel for joining us here, for being on the spot a little bit. And we're all going to be leaders of what happens next. It's all in our hands and our destiny. Please stay in your seats. We have our next presentation happening now. Thank you.